one of the key things that I said when we set up this team was that we can't regulate an industry that we don't understand. And so none of us were particular experts in online pornography back when we started. So it was really about embedding ourselves in the industry, trying to understand their viewpoint, trying to understand what's going on, and understand how regulation was being spoken about, so that we could really tap into that.
You're watching the Segpay News Network. This week we'll talk about age verification. Hello again, it's Mark Pettit in the Segpay studio here in the United States. You know, the main goal of the Segpay News Network is to help online merchants, primarily those in the high-risk space, grow and scale their businesses around the world. And part of that process, a very important process, is helping our merchants stay compliant to the ever-changing rules and regulations in this industry. We're very pleased to have a special guest with us today. He is Joe W., coming to us from London, England. He is with the Office of Communications, which is also known as Ofcom. Joe, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you very much for having me, Mark. It's great to be here.
Joe, just for our viewers here in the United States, it's my understanding that Ofcom is like the Federal Communications Commission here in the States. Is that accurate?
So yeah, we've got some similarities with the Federal Communications Commission. So they're the communications regulator in the US. We've also got some similarities with the FTC as well, the Federal Trade Commission. So Ofcom's the communications regulator in the UK. We regulate telecoms, post, broadcast, that kind of thing. But we also have responsibilities to make sure consumers are protected and make sure competition in the markets that we regulate thrives.
So, Joe, right now it's my understanding that you have a huge issue on your plate, and it's the Online Safety Act in the United Kingdom. Could you talk to us about exactly what the Online Safety Act is and what it's meant to accomplish?
Absolutely, yeah. So the main aim of the Online Safety Act is to keep UK users protected online with a particular focus on children. So there's two main aims, I suppose. One is to make sure that UK users are protected from illegal content online. And there's lots of different types of illegal content that's covered by the Act. And the other main aim is to make sure that UK children are protected from content that could harm them. So the illegal content that's covered by the Act, wide-ranging, things from terrorism right through to fraud. And when it comes to protecting children, those kind of things are pornography is one of them, which will be relevant to your merchants, but also other things that might be harmful to children, suicide, eating disorder content, those kind of things. So that if children or adults in the UK are accessing them, there's a lower risk of them coming into contact with illegal content or harmful material.
This act, of course, applies to merchants in the United Kingdom, but it does apply to merchants here in the United States as well, correct?
That's right, yeah. The scope of the Act is any service that has UK users or any service that targets the UK as a market. So if you're a service that has traffic from the United Kingdom, or you're aiming to take payments, for example, from the United Kingdom, then it's likely that your service is in scope of the Act. It doesn't matter which country you're based in. It's about whether you've got UK users visiting your service.
So it is possible, I would guess, for some merchants to just block their service in the UK, correct?
So some services might want to restrict access to UK users. That would be their choice. That's not something that Ofcom is looking to prioritize. We want to promote freedom of expression, and we want more choice for UK internet users. If services do block users from the UK in order to take themselves out of scope of the Act, that blocking needs to be really effective.
Gotcha. So let's talk about age verification for just the average person who might be watching. What does that mean, Joe?
So age verification is a type of age assurance. I'm going to get a little bit technical here with a few different terms. So age verification is where you confirm your identity or your age to a service. Age estimation is where a service estimates your age. And those two things are known in the UK under the umbrella term of age assurance. So when we talk about the Online Safety Act we're asking services to make sure that they are assuring the age of their users. And when it comes to adult services, what that means is services need to take steps to make sure that the age of the users is over 18, using things like age estimation or age verification.
And do they have to submit an ID, Joe, to verify the age, or does it vary by country and site?
No, so ID verification is one way of proving your age. So that's something that services can offer to their users when these rules come in. But ID verification is just one option for services. What Ofcom has said is that we need services to make sure that UK users are over 18 when it comes to adult services. And there's a variety of solutions that services can use. Our requirement really is that those solutions are highly effective. And that's something we've defined in our guidance, which services can find on our website. And basically it means that whatever solution you choose, as long as it meets our 4 criteria, technical accuracy, robustness, reliability, and fairness, then that solution should be compliant with the Online Safety Act.
I think there's universal agreement that children should not be able to access adult content, correct? But there's also a movement that adults should be able to view pretty much whatever they want to view as long as it's legal.
Absolutely right. The adults can access legal content, and we want to make sure that when we're implementing our rules, it's as easy as possible for adults to access legal content. We want it to be as frictionless as possible. As long as children aren't accessing this content, and we're talking just about pornography here, then we want the process to be as smooth as possible. When it comes to this massive change, we have had to go out to the industry to try and promote this. We've done a lot of work, especially in my specific team, trying to educate the adult industry that these changes are coming. We've been to a lot of conferences in the adult industry. One of the key things that I said when we set up this team was that we can't regulate an industry that we don't understand. And so none of us were particular experts in online pornography back when we started. But that was our aim. We wanted to come to these conferences. We wanted to have one-to-one conversations with the industry so that we could understand what was already in place, what safety measures are already being implemented by the industry, because we know a lot of the industry is already doing some of the things that we're asking for. So it was really about embedding ourselves in the industry, trying to understand their viewpoint, trying to understand what's going on, and understand how regulation was being spoken about, so that we could really tap into that. And it's interesting because one of the things we learned was that companies like Segpay and other payment providers are helping services navigate compliance issues. And that's one of the reasons that we wanted to talk to Segpay and other payment providers.
That's interesting. And I'm sure you found the trade shows eye-opening, right, Joe?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. It's a lot more business focused than most people would imagine. Talk to your friends and family. I'm going to an adult industry conference. Oh, that must be super exciting. Now, we don't go to the parties and the evening events. We just go to the days, and it's much more, as I say, much more business focused than maybe some would imagine.
I think people are surprised when they learn more about the high-risk space or adult business, how business-like it is. And I think one of the reasons Kathy Beardsley, the CEO of Segpay, has been so effective is she's so disarming, but she's made great inroads with partners at Visa and PayPal, just exceptional credibility. But part of it is a constant battle to help our merchants stay compliant. Because you can be shut down, right, Joe? The penalties are fairly substantial if you don't comply with the Online Safety Act, right? Can you walk us through that?
Yes, absolutely. So the first thing to say is that Ofcom always wants to work with services. In most cases, we want to work with services before we enter into any kind of enforcement. The best result for everyone is for us to have a conversation about what needs to change, and for that change to happen without the need for formal enforcement activity. Unless there's really serious harm happening, then enforcement is usually a last step for us. But when it comes to enforcement, there are serious penalties. So we can issue financial penalties up to £18 million or 10% of global turnover, whichever's greater. I checked this morning, 18 million is about 24 million US dollars. Those are the maximum penalties that we can levy. We're a proportionate regulator, and we always determine the size of the penalty based on the size of the service and based on kind of the seriousness of the contravention. Following on from penalties, if those don't change the behavior of the service, then there's other more intrusive measures that the Online Safety Act has given us powers to try and implement.
Let's talk about, there's been a timeline, right, Joe, of when people needed to respond. How did the process of alerting merchants go, and what has been the timeline leading up to where we're almost to enactment?
I'll talk about it in two stages. I'll talk about services who need to complete risk assessments, which is about the illegal harms. So that should have already happened. So we were alerting services in the industry that some of them needed to complete a risk assessment by March this year. And basically that involves looking at your service, seeing how risky it is for different types of harm in the Act, writing that assessment down, and then if Ofcom asks for it, then sending that to us. When it comes to age assurance, the key timeline here is that for studios and pay sites, so services that might be caught under something called Part 5 of the Act, those services already need to be taking steps to try and implement age assurance from today. That started in January. We're already engaging with services who are doing this. We've contacted providers who represent thousands of websites. Lots of them have already got age assurance, or they're getting age assurance very soon. And we've already opened enforcement into some services that aren't engaging with us. When it comes to user-generated content, the Act treats that slightly differently to content that you own. So we're talking here about tube sites, fan sites, cam sites. Those sites are covered by what's called Part 3 of the Act. Those sites have until the 25th of July this year to implement age assurance for UK users. And that's a really important distinction. It's UK users who need to be age assured from the 25th of July. It's not global users. What you need to do is make sure that traffic from the UK after the 25th of July, every one of those users has proven that they're over 18.
Joe, did I understand you correctly that the risk assessment was pretty much self-administered, not necessarily required unless you called on this merchant? Is that correct?
So it's required for everyone to conduct it. So that deadline has passed, but if people haven't done it, then there's still guidance on our website. They can still go and see how to conduct that risk assessment. Ofcom asked certain services to send us their risk assessment back in March, and we've been looking through those, learning more about their safety measures, learning about how they assess the risk on their site, learning more about the things they're doing to mitigate them. If Ofcom contacts a service and says, hey, have you got your illegal content risk assessment? Then we'd like that to be provided pretty quickly.
So it's almost a checklist. You should have this in your back pocket if you're called on, right? How did you decide which industries, which merchants to reach out to?
So the way that we engage with services, obviously we can't engage with every single service that UK users use. There's hundreds and hundreds of thousands. So we take an approach to look at a variety of sectors, because the Online Safety Act is not just about, say, social media or online pornography services. There's a whole wide variety of services that are in scope. We divided it by sector. We look at the risk of harm. We look at the number of users. And so there's a variety of factors that lead us to making a decision about who to engage with, whose risk assessment to ask for. And one of the things is also, Ofcom's a proactive regulator in that we look to try and address issues before they happen. But we also do respond quickly to issues if we're alerted to them. So if we're alerted to an issue on a service, then the first thing we'll probably do is go to that service and say, we've heard about this issue. Can you send us your risk assessment? So it's really good to make sure that you've got that on file ready in case anything happens.
Gotcha. Joe, we've heard that several merchants did not get the official communication. I think one specifically said that it had gone into their junk folder. Have you heard of that? And are there remedies if that has happened to a merchant?
So we have heard of that, and we know that happens. You know, we appreciate that Ofcom's email address sometimes might go into the junk, especially for people who aren't in the UK. Where that happens, it's a conversation. You know, Ofcom is a proportionate regulator. We want to have conversations with people. It's not a case of, oh, well, immediately you missed the deadline, or, you know, there's this binary yes, no, and so there's a huge fine on the way for you. It's a conversation that happens between, you know, two grown-up organizations to say, look, we didn't get this. Can we have more time? If that's appropriate, we might have that conversation. It depends on the context of the situation, but absolutely, in the first instance, we just want to open up some dialogue.
All right. So if this has happened to a merchant, they should not be afraid to reach out to you. It doesn't mean there's an instant penalty that's going to happen, right?
No,
so the key, it sounds like, is dialogue. You want to have a dialogue with the merchants, with the services, even if they've missed the initial deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. The more conversations we have, the better. And there are always circumstances that can be taken into account for for services who have missed a deadline, for example, and we'll take it on a case-by-case basis. We'll look at what's happened, we'll look at why it's happened, we'll have a conversation, and then we'll let the service know what the next step is.
I've been to your website. There's a wealth of information on the site, almost too much, Joe, to really comprehend it. Are there specific areas of the website that merchants in the adult or high-risk space should zero in on?
Yeah, I appreciate there's a lot of guidance on our website because the Online Safety Act is so wide. For merchants, Segpay's customers, I'd advise them to go to our adults only page. So if you search Ofcom adults only, what that is it's a directory of links that kind of walks you through what you need to do. Check whether you're in scope, do your risk assessment. Here's the risk assessment guidance. It directs people to harms that are more relevant to the adult industry than to other industries, and it provides things like templates on how to conduct a risk assessment. So hopefully the adults only page is the first place for adult businesses to start on Ofcom's website.
Can you walk us through what the risk assessment entailed? How difficult is it, Joe, for merchants to fill out?
So we've got a tool on the website. So if you go to the adults only page, the risk assessment tool is there. And there's also a template that services can use to help them navigate it. In terms of what it actually is, there's 17 different types of harm in the Online Safety Act. So 17 different types of illegal content. What the service needs to do is to have a look at each of those different types of harm and then assess how likely that harm is to occur on their service. So either negligible, low, medium, or high. They do that for all the different types of harm. And then what they look at is the safety measures that they have in place to mitigate those risks. So it might be that a service is naturally at high risk of something like child abuse material, for example, is one area that we know adult merchants have historically struggled with. But then they might have measures in place like content moderation or reporting functions that take that risk level down from a high down to a medium. And so it's about writing down what you're at risk of, what you're doing to mitigate that risk, and then providing evidence of how you've come to that conclusion. And that writing that down in a record, that's what Ofcom would ask for if we contacted a service.
So, but this feels like the primary focus is age assurance, right? You've got to protect children from your content.
Yes, absolutely. So as I say, that's why the Act is divided in two a little bit. You've got this need to conduct a risk assessment, and again, that's only for services caught by something called Part 3 of the Act. That's your tube sites, your cam sites, your fan sites. If you've got user-generated content on there, you need to do a risk assessment. If you don't have user-generated content, you're a studio or a pay site, you don't need to do a risk assessment. But everyone, studios, pay sites, tube sites, cam sites, fan sites, everyone needs age assurance at the latest by the 25th of July.
Also, Joe, I think there's some confusion over how age verification works. Are there tools or anything specifically you could recommend to merchants?
So we don't recommend specific solutions, but I can talk about what we've said in our guidance, which is as long as it meets the criteria that I mentioned earlier, then a solution could be highly effective. We do set out a list of non-exhaustive solutions that could be compliant. And so here we're talking about age estimation. So scanning your face and a piece of software estimates your age. Credit card checks, so not debit card checks. In the UK, you can get a debit card as young as 8. So it has to be a credit card if you're using that as your solution. There's now open banking, where your banking app will send a token to someone else and say, yes, this person's over 18. You can use ID, but we know that that's not a popular solution for users who want to access adult content. So it's there if services want to use it, but we think that these other methods, there's also mobile network checks or email verification checks. So you enter your email address, the solution uses your email address to identify what else you've used on the internet and comes back with an assessment as to whether you're over 18. So there's lots of solutions available in the market, and we didn't want to be prescriptive.
So, but it does sound like, depending on your budget, there is a solution for you out there.
Yes, well, the reason that we haven't been prescriptive is because we know that budget is going to be a real factor for services. And so we didn't want to choose one solution and then obviously that solution can just charge whatever they like. The reason that we've gone for a principles-based approach is so we want the market to develop. We know it's an early nascent market. It's an innovative market. And we think that as more solutions come to the market, that will increase competition, drive prices down. And we wanted it to be technologically neutral and kind of future-proof in that way.
I think it was really smart, Joe, that you guys went to some of the conferences and, saw directly for yourself what's happening in the industry. When you went to Segpay, did you learn things that you didn't know?
Segpay have been great. We've spoken to. I spoke to Kathy in LA, and I speak to Stanley in the UK, and Segpay have really, Segpay and other payment providers have really helped us understand more about how the adult industry operates and how it takes payments. They also taught us about the importance of the Visa and MasterCard rules when it comes to the content that's allowed, dictated by the card issuers. And so our engagement in the payment provider world has really helped us understand that industry. And as I said earlier, you've got to understand the industry you're regulating in order to be a competent and proportionate regulator.
I think that's what's helped Segpay stand out in the marketplace, as being this guidance counselor, if you will, to merchants, and explaining to them that you have to do the work on the front end to make sure you're compliant, because what you don't want is to get up and running on some payment site and then 24 hours later or 3 weeks later, they shut you down for non-compliance. It's best to get it done on the front end. And it sounds similar to the Online Safety Act, is let's go ahead and take these steps now to become compliant and stay compliant.
Yeah, absolutely. When we were engaging with Segpay and other payment providers, we learned about their onboarding process, which usually requires services to do a load of checks. Are you moderating content before it's live? Are you checking you've got the consent and the ID documents of services? And a lot of those checks that Segpay is conducting are the similar things that the Online Safety Act requires. And so there's a lot of alignment here. And I think what that hopefully means is that services who already have a payment provider like Segpay, it's not going to be too much of a jump to be compliant with the Online Safety Act, because these are similar things that the world of finance requires from these services.
And Joe, I've also seen that you've posted on your website that you've found a couple of merchants that are not compliant to this point. Is that to just warn the industry that you're serious? Do these companies who may have had a wobble, can they rehabilitate themselves with Ofcom?
In the cases that you're talking about, the investigations that we've opened, those services have not replied to us. They haven't engaged with us. They haven't sent us their compliance plans, and they haven't got age assurance. So all of those things together meant that they were the first investigations that we wanted to launch, because there's no dialogue there. There's no discussion. Other services are on the path to implementing age assurance, and we've not opened an investigation into them because they're in dialogue with the regulator.
So if you're a merchant watching this right now, if you haven't completed the risk assessment, go back, check your junk folder, right, Joe? There could be a miscommunication where they did not get the information, but that's no excuse. You must be compliant. And then you need, as part 3, to have that age verification solution in place by July 25th.
25th of July is the latest point at which all services who allow pornography need to be having that age assurance solution in place just for their UK users.
All righty. Joe, is there anything else you'd like to cover or say to merchants who might be watching?
I guess the big thing to try and reinforce is that Ofcom wants to have a dialogue with the industry, and it wants to have a dialogue with merchants. We understand that the regulations are complex. We understand that in some cases this represents a big change from what services are used to. And so if anyone has questions or queries or just wants to talk to us about the Act at all, we're here and we're open. And engaging with the regulator, it doesn't make you more of a target. That's not the case. I know that usually that sometimes people get advice that, just don't engage and then maybe they'll go away. Engaging with us is actually more beneficial for services, because then we can talk you through what needs to happen. We can provide guidance that's on our website, and we can have a dialogue about how to move the dial on safety measures. If services are taking steps and trying to be compliant, that's exactly where we want them to be. And we'll get them there, and that's our overall aim. But it's the services who aren't engaging at all that are our biggest concern.
Joe W. from Ofcom in London. Joe, you were our very first international guest here on the Segpay News Network, and we thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you, Mark. I'm very honored. Cheers.
Cheers.